But the thing about food is that it's celebration, it's family, it's warmth, it's friendship, it's joy, it's comfort, it's love, it's care. But at the same time, when we talk about food, we talk about obesity, we talk about weight gain, we talk about blood pressure, we talk about diabetes, heart disease, and a bunch of other scary things. Where's the middle ground in our relationship with food? How can it still be love and warmth and caring without making you sick in the long term? Fundamentally, it's about finding that middle ground where you can have a relationship with food that is comforting and nurturing. That's what we're going to talk about with Pooja Makhija, who is a celebrity nutritionist and has had much success in her career. We'll talk about what we should and shouldn't be eating, how we should eat it, at what time, but fundamentally, how to come up with ways to look after ourselves that will last a lifetime. Use the chapter breakup to figure out which questions you will find most use in, but I do hope you watch the whole thing.
Thank you for coming in to hang out and spend time with me and talk about health and food and all of the things that you normally spend your day discussing. We have a whole list of questions that my team and I have put together for you. But fundamentally, I think that one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation is because we're at a crossroad when it comes to health and food and how we look after ourselves. It's I think coming out of our parents' generation, where food was simpler because it was cooked at home, the understanding of food is very different today. And I find that a lot of it is happening on social media. So my first question to you is this. There are a lot of health influencers, right, saying very different things every day. What is your reaction to, health influencers on social media?
Okay, firstly, thank you. Thank you for having me here. You have a voice that matters, so keep that up.
Thank you.
And to be here is a privilege, so thank you for having me here. So yes, health is quite hot favorite topic. Right? So everyone wants to have some opinion and a voice, and for some reason, I think that everyone's perception is that if I say something different, I'm more meaningful. Okay, so everyone's trying to be different. Okay, so everyone's trying to say the same thing in different voices or completely say something that is different. But because they are trying to be so different so that they are heard, we have left logic and human physiology and basic nutrition very far behind.
Because that is so. I love this about Instagram, and obviously it's a professional hazard. I don't recommend it, but I spend a lot of time on Instagram, and there'll be someone who will say, and this is largely in the West. I have not seen an Indian do it, but eat only meat all the time, right? Eat only animal products, and there are people who do that. And then there are those who eat only fruits, and then there are those who eat only vegetables and raw food. And then my favorite category are the trad wives who cook everything from scratch. I spend 4 hours like kneading bread, So I love these guys because they're so entertaining. But I can't understand how any one of these things is true. So what is your fundamental theory about food?
See, firstly, what you just said, that all of it is so entertaining.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
That's a sad truth. That our health or how we should eat should also be entertaining. See, because if I'm going to come on social media or come here and tell you to eat dal roti sabzi, how am I entertaining? How am I different? And my daughter told me that. She's like, Mom, you see the same things. And you've been saying the same saga since 20 years.
So what's your thing that you've been saying for the last 20 years? What's that philosophy?
Eat to delete.
What does that mean?
Give your body what your body wants.
Okay.
Your body will give you what you want. It's not a magic show.
Okay.
There's a simple book of human physiology. Understand it. How your body functions. What is your body made up of? How your body has to be fed. It's human physiology. basic science which hasn't changed for 100 years. That's how the human body was meant to be fed. Plain, simple, basic. But because we want to make everything entertaining or different, we are running away from the roots.
So you believe fundamentally that we should be eating what our grandparents ate?
Marvelous. I wish we were getting the food they got.
Yeah. That was going to be my follow-up question.
I wish we had the soil they had. I wish, but we don't. But if we even eat by the theory they followed, now they had a theory
Which is?
which was masters in nutrition se bhi high. They hadn't done anything, but our Indian eating culture has sound roots. Sound. Our plate is the most balanced if you look at it physiologically, scientifically, experimentally.
Okay.
Our plate was always balanced. There are many logics that have today come up in the world of food and health. So the theory of chronobiology. What is that? Eating from sunset to sunrise.
Right.
Okay, big breakfast, small lunch, smallest dinner. Our ancestors always did that, right?
There's a whole idea now that the fundamental Indian plate that you said, which is the most balanced, doesn't have enough protein in it, and we eat too much carbs. And so there's a problem with the balance there. Is that something you agree with?
I don't know how their plate was technically looked. It looked.
But
When let's look at it.
So I mean, fundamentally, what do most Indians eat? If you're from the south, I'm from the south. We eat rice. There's always a rasam or a sambar or a dal based, some vegetable, and dahi. And that's fundamentally the plate. And in the north, there's rotis with dal with sabzi. So where's the protein?
Your dal.
Is the dal enough? A lot of doctors will now tell us, no, the dal is not enough.
It's not complete protein.
Okay.
It's not complete protein. It's incomplete. But when I couple the dal and the rice, I complete the 9 essential amino acids. When I eat the roti and dal, I complete it. And our bodies don't just take proteins separately. We have a protein basket.
Okay.
So all the protein I'm adding is accumulated in the amino acid because after we eat, food is digested. When it's digested, it's broken down into amino acids. So if I got 8 from here and another 8 from somewhere else, I got my 9 essential, I can manage.
Okay.
So the idea here is that your carbs have to always be dressed. Okay, and our ancestors, now that's another theory we're talking about today, right? But our ancestors always did that. We say today naked carbs is the trouble, right? Dress up your carbs. So what do the carbs wear? Fiber from the front, proteins from the back. Fiber from the front is sabzi. We always ate sabzi. And today we talk about order of eating.
Yeah.
Okay, eat balanced, but the order in which you put it into your mouth matters. They did that. You go to any...
Does it matter though, in your opinion?
Definitely matters.
It does. Okay.
Definitely matters.
So you would say fiber, then carbs, then protein in that order?
No, I would say fiber. And in fiber also, if it's raw, it's more potent choking of the drain. So imagine your stomach to be like a drain. Okay? If you put carbs or sugar in it first, they digest and through the pipe is gone into your bloodstream. But if you're going to choke the drain, put raw fiber, kakri, tomato, gajar, 50% of your veggies on the plate, 50% of your protein, dals or chicken or whatever, choke. Then use the carb and 50% fiber and 50% sabzi and protein. So by the time your body breaks down the insoluble fiber in your sabzi, then reaches the protein and the amino acid, and then on top of that sits the carb, the spikes in your blood sugar levels are more controlled, more regulated, and therefore your glycemic response is better. Index will always stay the same depending on the food we
What you're eating, yes.
Yeah, but the response becomes better just by changing the style.
Yeah.
So
fundamentally what I'm hearing is that you're not a fan of the keto or the intermittent or these new things that keep coming and going, because I mean, I was sitting down with my team and they said, someone tells us to have breakfast, someone tells us not to have breakfast, to eat the small meals, eat the big meals. You don't believe in any of this stuff.
I believe in only one thing.
Okay.
What you start, you continue. Simple. If you think that the path for you is keto, for example, okay, I love the idea. I'm not saying I love the idea, but you love the idea. It sounds good to you. I can eat as much fat as I want. I can eat cashews all day.
And I can eat a stick of butter, yeah.
I can eat cheese all day. If that appeals to you. And for the rest of your life you don't want to look at veggies and fruits and roti and rice, and that gives you joy, bravo, go for it. But if it is a path you're taking just to reach a particular home or that size or that body weight, it's only going to be temporary. So start something you can do forever. Simple. Whatever that is.
Yeah.
If it's intermittent, if it's eating 2 hourly, if it's eating balanced, I just believe if you give your body everything and lose weight, you give your body everything for the rest of your life every day and not to worry about your weight. It's as simple.
So the solution that you offer your clients who come to you to lose weight or to lose fat is to be in a calorie deficient.
Of course, there has to be a little bit of math.
Okay.
Okay, there has to be math, there has to be science. But basically there has to be consistency. Okay, because to achieve anything, you have to prevail consistency and love to do it. You must enjoy what you're doing. If it's something that you're putting a gun to your head to do, an exercise regime or a diet, how long will you do it for?
And the calorie deficit is achieved by cutting down on fat or by cutting down on...
Balanced. So
Give me an example.
So for example, we calculate what is your metabolic need. Okay, what is metabolic need? There's something known as BMR, basal metabolic rate, and that is someone's age into height into weight. There's an equation to do it, along with how much body fat do you have, what is your physical activity, okay, what is your TEE, what is the energy that you're expending even at rest. We calculate all of that. We come to a number. Okay, say it's X. Now most nutritionists say, okay, let's give you 1,000 calories lesser than what you need. If X is your need, let me cut 1,000 calories. Let me keep a large deficit, which gives her enough window margin to play, cheat, be naughty here and there, have a drink here and there. But when you give a very large margin, you cut back on what is known as muscle loss. Now, that's not something I believe in, because muscle loss is temporary. Do a very low calorie diet, lose weight fast, but lose muscle, lose hair, lose energy, lose stamina, lose immunity. And along with weight, you've also lost your health. Instead, I believe, eat to delete. Figure out what is your eat number. What is your body's need. Give a very small deficit. Increase the deficit with cardio or an exercise. So you keep a very, exercise plus calorie deficit is only 300, 400 calories a day, which equals into 30 days equals to 2 to 3 kilos, sustainable weight loss for the rest of your life.
There used to be a time, like you said, when our grandparents were around, where the kind of food that we were getting was made at home, to a point where, your achar was made at home, your papads were made at home, everything was made at home, right? Do you believe the advent of easy, quick commerce and fast delivery food apps has changed the way we are eating as a country?
Of course.
Is that where the health problems are coming from?
Of course, because who is creating these health apps, or what is the objective? For me to create a portal to give you food or manufacture food, is it because I think you're hungry or I have this big heart and I want to feed you good healthy food? Is that my intention? Man's intention is very simple. I need to make a buck.
Yeah.
When I have to make a buck, I have to see somewhere I have to cut cost. So whether it is an inferior quality product or oil or technique, I have to make a buck. So my simplest belief to get healthy is eat more of what God or nature has made.
Yeah.
And use as little as you can of what man makes. Because eventually everything man makes, he's making for his own profit. Okay. That is why I'll come and I'll demean one food. I'll say, oh, sugar is so bad. Let's use sucralose. So then I have a whole aisle of sucralose products. Then I'll say, hey, sucralose is so bad. Let's use blah, blah. Then I'll have a whole aisle of those products. Why am I doing all of that? It's only because I want to make more things.
Sell something.
I want to give you something that is not on the market. I want to be different.
So, I'll ask you the question about sugar, but since you brought it up, the sugar supplements, the Diet Cokes, is that a no-no for you?
Okay. So, there are many people who will say, Peena hai to then drink the real thing.
But what is the real thing?
Matlab, the sugar.
Okay.
So, from the school of thought where I come from, I will tell you eat everything. Okay. I'm not going to be against rice or bread or noodles or pasta. Nothing. There has to be a smart way to eat it. Dress them up well. Control your quantities. And there is no such food that's bad for you. But there is one food that is not needed by you, which is plain refined sugar. Or the 100 other forms that buddhu banane ke liye I can sell it to you. Honey, demamra sugar, coconut sugar, date sugar. Oh, I'm so healthy. I use only good.
It's all sugar.
It's all buddhu banane ke dusre naam. Simple.
Because a lot of people would put like jaggery in their chai. So, no,
I'm so healthy.
brown
This is
sugar,
healthy
jaggery.
cake.
It's made with honey and brown sugar.
Yeah. But all of those foods are made from the same basic ingredient, which is having the same basic physiological response in your body that spikes your sugar levels. Finito. Sugar is the one thing I'm telling you to stay away from, because that is where the whole problem starts. So if you're going to tell me evil versus evilo, okay, in my opinion, I would still have a can of Diet Coke versus regular Coke.
So see, the other question I wanted to ask you was this whole idea of the Indian breakfast, right? Our Indian breakfasts are fundamentally carbs. Poha, idli, dosa, all of these things. But they're now telling us that no, you need to have your eggs for breakfast and not hit your system directly with the white carbs, which is the parathas. Where do you stand on the Indian breakfast?
The Indian breakfasts are great.
Okay.
Okay. They're far better than cereal and
Waffles.
milk and waffles and pancakes and
Pancakes.
coffee or muffin and donut and coffee.
Yes.
Okay, our breakfasts are always savory. One. Savory breakfast. What you start your palate with, you hit more of that.
Yes.
Those notes in the
Yes,
day.
yes.
So if you start your day with sugar, you will want more sugar. You know, sugar is 8 times more addictive than
Nicotine. Oh, like cocaine.
and cocaine.
Okay.
8 times more addictive. It hits the same dopamine center in our brain. 8 times more addictive than cocaine. So if I start my day with sugar, I want sugar, sugar, sugar. More begets more. Simple, right? But if I start my day with salt or savory, I've done a better job. Now, you say our breakfasts are carb rich. I agree. But we can tweak them, right? If our knowledge has changed, okay, we can tweak them. A little bit of sprouts and poha. That's not unheard of. Idli or dosa, but it's always accompanied by sambar. So that's the protein, right? Paratha, but with dal or dal ka paratha. Or sprout or some sattu powder in while kneading the dough of the atta of the paratha. Small tweaks can be made, but our breakfast is savory. B, our breakfast is freshly made and hot and served with love. It's not from a box or a can or a dabba. Okay, you're making it at home, you're making it fresh, and you're starting your day wholesome with a meal that should be a big meal. A paratha is a good meal, and that's the way it should be. And if you can do paratha and eggs, nothing like it.
So, okay, so here's the question about the Indian meal. Again, on the internet and generally across the world, there's a difference of opinion on whether the plant-based meals are healthier for you or the animal product-based meals. So, vegan versus not vegan or vegetarian versus non-vegetarian. What is better, in your opinion?
Whatever works for you is better.
Okay.
There is no such thing as which carb is better, which atta is better, which rice is better, which bread is better, which type of eating is better. Nobody is the authority to tell you which is better. What suits you better? You are an individual that God has made completely different. Your needs are your needs. If your body can survive on vegetarian protein, then very good for you. For my example, I do need non-vegetarian. I do eat non-vegetarian and I need it. Maybe because my body is used to it. Now, what suits me may not suit you.
Research shows us that more than half the girls and the women in India are anemic because they're not getting enough iron. We have a B12 deficiency problem in India. We have a vitamin D deficiency for a country that gets so much sunshine, right? How do we fix these things within our existing diets? Are we doing something wrong?
54% Indian women are anemic. 99% Indians are vitamin D deficit, including street children. They were tested. They tested the vitamin D levels of street children. Now, if you and I say we live lives of happiness and luxury, where we are trying to protect ourselves from the sun and we are wearing sunscreen and we are privileged enough to have homes and cars and an umbrella, then we are not getting enough adequate sunlight, so which is why we are vitamin D deficit. But then they tested street children of India to find even they were vitamin D deficit. Now, why is that happening? I have a few theories of my own. These are my own theories. Either the layer of pollution above us is so high that the UV-free light, which is actually needed to penetrate to convert inactive form of vitamin D to the active form of vitamin D is not.
It's not happening.
Or two, all of this conversion happens in our liver, and our livers are too tired and too fatty to do their job. There is a non-alcoholic fatty liver syndrome, which is far more prevalent. And Indians are genetically blessed to have a thrifty gene. So we do have a very high prevalence. 1 in 2, every alternate person has a non-alcoholic fatty liver. So our livers are too overloaded to do the conversion of active to inactive to active vitamin D. And so that's why none of us have vitamin D.
What about B12? How do vegetarians get their B12?
B12s are found in more animal food because it's made by the active gut microbiome of the animal you're eating, and also it is absorbed in our gut. So if I have the gut microbiome, whether I'm vegetarian or not, I can make vitamin B12 and absorb it. But if I'm non-vegetarian and I'm eating all the meat in the world, I can still be B12 deficit because my gut microbiome is not doing the job. And none of our gut microbiome is in a happy place anymore because there's just that much chemical toxins, environmental toxins, cosmetic toxins that we are putting on ourselves, inhaling, breathing every single day, that our gut microbiome is not in a happy place. You know, our bodies has a pharmaceutical industry in our gut. We can make everything from vitamins to antibiotics to everything. But we need to give our body the raw material. But today, who is eating with thought?
Because we're two women talking, a lot of times, and I've noticed this across the board, right? Women of all ages, from different stratas of society, put themselves last. So it's all about, I will get up in the morning, I will cook everybody's breakfast, everybody's dabba, I will make sure everyone's looked after, I will go do my own work, I will come back, baad mein khayenge. I know women who eat standing in the kitchen because there's not enough time, or they'll eat whatever's available or whatever's left at the end, or sometimes whatever the child has not eaten because you don't want to waste the food. What is the price of that?
Just by the way, eating leftovers, eating half a roti of your child's plate every day is 4 kilos a year.
Why?
Because it's cumulative calories, na? Add on. Assuming you're eating that every day of your child's plate, even just 100 calories, 365 days a year is that much.
Do you think that there's a massive miscommunication, especially in Indian societies, that healthcare is a luxury, that to be able to look after yourself, to be able to choose good food, can only come after you have a certain amount of money?
I don't think in India. I think it's a thought process of humanity that needs to be addressed. Okay? Everyone thinks that taking care of my body or how I look is a luxury I will do when either I have the luxury of time or money. Okay, because right now my children's needs are important. Right now they're small. Right now I need to make 4 rupees. Right now I need to run the car. Okay, but right now I don't have the time to hire a nutritionist or pay a trainer. Right now I have to focus my energies elsewhere. But that's where we go wrong. Self-care is a non-negotiable. And self-care isn't to be done in a certain phase of your life. Self-care is daily. It's daily love and respect I give my body. We have been fortunate enough to be gifted this miraculous body. If we just pause 1 minute and think about how marvelous this body is, how is it that I am thinking this and my neurons are processing it and my motor skills are moving my hand, my eyes are speaking my words, how does this body manage it? But what is the one thing that you do to charge it? Voluntarily. Is the food you give it. Even the air we breathe is not in our control.
Yeah.
But the food is. So that's love and respect. We have been gifted to be born human. And we have to learn to appreciate this body. We are all behaving like we have a spare body kept in the locker. When I have made enough name and fame and money, I'll just go swap it for that body. We don't get a spare body. We get just one. One that must be treated with love and respect today, so that when I'm older, I have love and respect of this body.
If you were to teach children about food and about health in school, what would you teach them?
I wish it becomes a subject that is compulsory to teach in schools.
Yeah.
Apparently, Japan has started it.
Yes.
Yes. They all have to have a nutritionist. All meals have to be cooked from scratch. Children have to be taught nutrition.
And they help when cooking.
Yeah,
in
and they
school.
cook. And
Yeah.
nothing can be opened from a packet. Everything has to be made fresh. And they are taught nutrition. And I wish the world starts with it. Because if you teach them young, then you don't need to.
Yeah.
You don't need to do any work further.
What would you teach them? If
Basic human physiology.
Okay.
What are your bones made up of? What does your liver, lung, kidney do? How do they function? What is blood? What is hemoglobin? Okay, and then what is correlation to food? Well, how does iron come from spinach, and how does it affect your blood? Basic, because today's children are very, very intelligent. Okay, they want to know why and cause and effect of everything, and if you teach them with logic, they will understand everything.
There's a trend now of either eating in front of screens or feeding children before screens. And I know that you have a belief in mindful eating. What's your response to eating in front of a screen?
So luckily, my kids are older today.
Yeah.
So when they were little, there were no screens. Okay. But even today, meal times are no screen times.
Yeah.
Even today. Because maybe I taught them that when they were little. So it's very easy for me to continue that. Phones are off the table, including mamas and papas. There is no phones on the table. Meals are to be eaten to enjoy the khana. And that's a very strict rule. Food is nutrition for the mind, body and soul. You're teaching them that relationship. We have to have a relationship with food. Faye, that's something we should talk about. We have to have a relationship. We're taught every relationship when we're little, aren't we? दादाजी से ऐसे बोलते हैं,
Yeah.
दोस्त को yo बोलते हैं,
Yeah.
right? We correct them when they're little. आप, तू. We teach them when they're little. That's relationship advice, right? So teach them relationship with food. Food is love, nurture, and respect to this body. It is the way this body thrives, or it is the way the body dies. So if you teach them that, then hopefully we are going to have a world that doesn't have so many metabolic complications all arising from the food we're eating.
There's also a problem of emotional eating, right? Because yes, food is petrol that you put in your car. That's how your body utilizes. That's how your body moves. But a lot of times it's, there's mental health, there's stress that you're dealing with. You come back after a long day. Finally, when everybody's asleep and the house is quiet, you reward yourself with something that completely derails all of the discipline of the day. How do you deal with emotional eating?
So again, it goes back to how food was presented to us. Okay, when you were little and you got hurt, okay, or you were crying over a toy that broke, or it's so hot, or you got stuck somewhere. How were we distracted? How were we distracted? We have period pain. How were we distracted? With food. Today, if you and I are hurt or lonely or bored or alone, we're looking for the same comfort because that's how we kept the relationship with food. But when I'm trying to teach my children relationship with food, we're trying to say that this is cause and effect. You have to eat. If you eat right, you live right. You eat wrong, you don't do it right. Your body, your choice.
No, so what have you replaced the love with?
Love, care of your liver and heart and lungs and kidney and skin. So when I'm going to ask you to eat a fruit, or I'm going to ask you to have a celery juice, okay, mostly it'll be looked at mum like.
So then effectively what you're telling me that in your house it's Diwali and everybody's having celery juice?
No, they will have that as well. I'm not saying that they.
So how do you don't associate that happy families together, we're celebrating, this is joy with food?
Because it's just part of the accessory, right? The whole meal is not going to be kaju katri. For example, my buddy loves her kaju katri. Okay, anyone going to London will carry a little bit for her, and I will send it for her. But that doesn't mean she finishes the whole box at one time. She relishes bites of it, and she enjoys it, and she savors it because she knows that too much is too bad for at one time. See, everything is all about portion control. So, and that's what you have to come to understanding with, that the whole box can be kept there and I'll enjoy it over time. But what we try to do is, it's Diwali and if it's there, it should be finished. That's where it becomes wrong. 80% of the time, give your body what the body wants. Then you play with the 20% of what your tongue wants.
Well, I do want to ask you about certain food things. This is more of a rapid fire, I guess. Protein bars or protein shakes. Yes, no, maybe.
Like I said initially, what man makes for his profit. So with that theory, as little of it as possible. But for sake of convenience, if you do it intelligently, learn how to read labels.
Yeah.
So if it says it's a protein bar, it's a very simple math. See the total calories, see the grams of protein. Say, for example, it says 10 grams of protein in the bar. Add a 0 to it. Okay. And if you add the 0 to it, so 10 grams of protein, 0 to it, 100. If it is less than or equal to the calories the bar is giving you, it is giving you more of protein. But if it says 270 calories for the bar and 10 grams of protein, it's more a sugar bar or a fat bar than a protein bar. So it's easier to look at it. There are very few in the market that will actually meet the tab. But if you do it intelligently and you're stuck and you don't have access to your ghar ka khana, then you do use it sometimes, if you find the right one. But protein shakes as a replacement, or a general rule that protein shakes are going to make me healthy, because proteins were actually represented by lawyers that did a very fabulous job. For some reason, everyone looks up at proteins and looks down at carbs, right?
Yeah.
But carbs are your energy givers. The first function of carbs is protein sparing action. They spare the protein to do what it's meant to do: repair, heal, wear and tear, growth, immunity. But when I skip my carbs and say, oh, I won't eat roti, but I'll have a protein shake and I'll do proteins, who runs the car? So then the proteins have to do the job of the carbs, because you need energy to run this body, to walk, talk, think, breathe, supply, excrete. Everything requires energy. And if you skip carbs and do surplus proteins, you're not getting healthier. You're just taxing your body to do the job of one nutrient is doing the job of the other. So you have to be intelligent.
What's your take on ghee and butter?
Ghee is great. Okay. In moderation. Just because ghee is healthy, we don't do all ghee.
Right.
Like, there are so many of my clients who will say, we stopped oil in our house. We do only ghee. Now, ghee is saturated fat. We have to do a mix between saturated and unsaturated. So 1 teaspoon, max 2 teaspoons of ghee, good. But when you say, oh, I have 6 teaspoons of ghee a day, not good. So like I said, nothing is bad for you.
As long as it's in moderation. There's a debate also about oils, right? Which they're now saying the refined sort of seed oils are bad for
every
us.
day.
Yeah.
Right? We learn every day. Did we know that refined oils were bad? But now when science comes up, see, remember, man is always trying to create new products, right? So because I want to start a market of cold pressed products, I studied the refined oil, said, oh, they use some bleaches to refine it, which is bad for us. So now refined oils are bad. So research is ever changing. Okay. And sometimes we have to look back at who's doing that research, who's funding that research. And maybe there is another ball game altogether when they say that refined is bad.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like I said, the more we can do what man is touching less. Making oils is not difficult. Extracting it, I'm not saying, oh, please go take your own olives and extract the oil. But basic ones can be done. A little bit of ghee can be made at home. So you do what you can do. But I don't think there is a banish rule of all cold press oils are good for health.
Yeah. The idea now that a lot of us are mildly allergic or intolerant to gluten and dairy, how do we, is that something you believe? Is that something we should try and establish?
Yeah, that's because we have genetically modified the wheat in the 1970s. In the Green Revolution, we took the wheat, we genetically modified it from 3 to 4% to 8 to 12%. So that we have fluffier, softer, tastier, gooier bakery products. The croissant should be soft and fluffy. How? It's because it has more gluten. Gluten is the binding protein that gives it the texture and the shelf life. So we wanted to make better products, so we genetically modified the gluten. Now, our bodies has glutase, an enzyme to digest the gluten, but not that much. We have over-exhausted it. So most of us have become sensitive to gluten. It's not that we're intolerant, but too much of it is causing gas and indigestion. So reduce it where it can be. Now, as Indians, to switch your roti, easiest thing in the book. For them, it's difficult to get gluten-free roti or gluten-free bread. For us to switch basic needs, we have all the millet access. So we switch around. Dairy again only because of the ways that we have taken care of the cow. Cow is not eating what it should eat. So how is it giving us the milk that we should drink? The cow is supposed to eat grass, but our cow today is eating soybean husk or remnants of grains. So she doesn't have grass left to graze. So if she's not eating right, she's not giving us right. That's why we are intolerant to it.
Let's talk about how nutrition is different for men and women at different life stages, right? Because I feel like in India, we know this when women are having babies and when they're feeding those babies. So during that pregnancy and breastfeeding stage, there's this whole idea, beta ye khao, ye khani chahiye, wo khani chahiye. But as soon as that phase is over, nobody cares anymore. But as women approach perimenopause, menopause, the nutrition needs are different. And we don't talk about that.
Nobody talks about that. Not just Indian women, but nobody talks about that. It's like we were made to make babies, and once our reproductive stages are over, our job is done, and we are just left to then live without the hormones that were fueling us. Okay, black ears, because menopause is not just affecting you when you hit menopause.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with my friend yesterday. She's like, I'm not in menopause. I still get my periods. I have not a single symptom that you're talking about. I'm not in menopause. Oh, you're not in menopause. You're in perimenopause. And we don't take care of our menopause for today. We invest in menopause care today to be taking care of 20 years later, our bones and our mind.
Yeah.
Okay. It's either mental frailty, mental illness, or physical frailty that will do us in when we're 20 years post-menopause. Look at our moms.
Yeah.
Look at our nannies. Okay, what happened to them? If you think about it, and you think about the men in your life, the older men, they're hale-hearty and then gone. But women, either they're losing their mind or they lose their strength. They have a fall, they have a fracture, they're bedridden, and they sadly have to suffer through before they die.
What is the role that nutrition plays?
Everything. Nutrition at this point in stage can help you with dementia, cardiovascular risks, cancers, osteoporosis, everything. Everything can be addressed with good nutrition, good supplementation, good sleep habits. And anyone who's going through perimenopause will say sleep disappears. They want to sleep, but they can't sleep. That's because estrogen receptors are not just made for our sex hormones. They're not just sex hormones. They're neurohormones. They affect your brain. We have receptors for them in every organ, including our bones and our liver and our heart and our lungs. So all organs suffer. So because our brain isn't getting enough estrogen, we're not being able to think. Heard of the tip of the tongue syndrome? Happens to me many times. I know the word, I know the exact phrase, but I can't say it. It's there, but it's on my tongue, but not out. So that's what menopause is doing to us, but no one wants to speak about it.
Thank you so much for hanging out and answering all of my questions. And hopefully that message that you've been giving us for the last 20 years will sink in this time.
I hope so. That's the idea always. And like I said, your voice matters. And I wish more people that follow you and listen to you can learn to love and respect this beautiful body we have been given. It's not something that you do a fad with or play with. We learn to respect it. We just have to give it the reverence of being born human. And therefore, this is the one chance we get to live this life. And let's live it to the best we can.
Thank you.